Matt, I will be 100% upfront and honest. I like some weird music. I mean, I like country music. I like the,
Polish dance music?
Yeah, I like Polish dance music. The type of music that you could go drinking on a tailgate on a Saturday night outside of a football game. But also some of the weirdest stuff you've ever heard. One song that I really like is You Make Me Feel Like I'm Living a Teenage Dream by Katy Perry. It's a classic. It's a good song. I'm not afraid to admit it. Chase Hooper's nickname is The Dream. And Matt, in this fight, Chase Hooper taking on Slippery Pete Barrett. And it's a weird fight. It's a crossroads fight. It's a prospect against an old vet. And when we talk about old vets, I mean, Peter Barrett only has one UFC fight to his name. It's a loss. It was his last fight against Youssef Zalal. Zalal coming in on short notice in that one. Peter Barrett didn't manage all that well. He had moments, but it was mostly Barrett chasing Youssef Zalal and Youssef Zalal working in his wrestling. It was a real short notice type of fight for Zalal, and it ended up costing him in his next short notice fight against Ilia Topuria, but that's another fight for another day. For Peter Barrett, though, it's just the overall body of work that he has. He's got an 11-4 record, but you look at some of the competition that he's faced, and it's a lot of guys from the regional scene. We always talk about this guy, and I've had the pleasure, I guess, of seeing him fight not once, but twice. Jay Ellis. Peter Barrett has a win over Jay Ellis, one of the most eclectic records you're ever going to find out there. You look at Jay Ellis in one hand, you look at Travis Fulton in the other, and they're like ships passing in the night. They never would have fought because one's a heavyweight, one's a lightweight, but it is what it is. So Jay Ellis, Peter Barrett, there's a connection there. But for Chase Hooper, it's a guy that you got to focus on because he just picked up his first career loss in his last fight. He's 9-1-1. In the fight against Alex Caceres, we talk about, just an absolute drubbing. That fight was an absolute drubbing. Now, I know Alex Caceres didn't have this, crazy work rate, and the judges might not have scored it in a weird way. I mean, it was 30-27 scores. Alex Caceres won that fight big time.
It could have been 30-26. It really could have been. And it's nothing against Chase Hooper. It's very weird that I'm breaking down a fight of a guy who's younger than I am, though. That's very odd to me, because I couldn't imagine having 11 professional fights at this point. When I think of Chase Hooper and his career moving forward, I don't ever think of him as a featherweight. I'll be honest. I do think of him more as a lightweight, and I do mean that as to Chase Hooper's not a finished product in the least bit. He's like Jell-O that you just put the powder in, you just put in the fridge. It needs a little bit of time to solidify. And for Chase Hooper, his skill set's a little green. He's phenomenal at jiu-jitsu. We all know how good he is on the ground. But that Alex Caceres fight, and it was weird because Hooper was the favorite going into that, even though he was so young. Caceres has been in UFC main events before. He's fought Sergio Pettis, Uriah Faber, like Alex Caceres, Max Holloway, or Jair Rodriguez. He's a guy who's been around and done that, and he's been in the UFC for a very long time. And like you said, he beat the brakes off poor Chase Hooper. I kind of like it, though. And I know that's weird to say. He did take a lot of damage in that fight. But we were talking about this earlier with, and I'm going to mention this in another show, Roosevelt Roberts, when he fought Jim Miller, it was a lose-lose situation. Because if you beat a guy like Jim Miller, you're just fighting killers from that point on. And if you lose to a guy like Jim Miller, not really the worst thing in the world, you lost to a guy who's more established than you in the division. I see this fight being very similar for Chase Hooper. Yes, you lost to Alex Caceres, but when a guy is so young and he does have such a developing skill set, I do tend to think that we see the biggest sort of steps forward in progression after those after those really bad losses. And I think Chase Hooper's a guy too, and I'm sure you're going to mention it. Changed camp, has some great, really high-level sparring partners that he has to his benefit now. And Peter Barrett, it's a weird case because I don't think Chase Hooper is going to come out here striking like Alex Pereira with one new camp. I do think that's going to take some time to kind of, I guess, round out his striking game. Peter Barrett's 100% going to have the striking advantage in this fight. It's just when you look at Barrett's weaknesses, they do play right into the strengths of Chase Hooper.
That's the thing. Peter Barrett's had long layoffs in his career. He's 13 years older than Chase Hooper. And Matt, kind of looking at it, the fact that Peter Barrett splits time between Sityodtong, Boston to work his striking, trains out of Lausanne's MMA as far as his groundwork. And I mean, there's so many good fighters that train out of there. You have the man himself, Joe Lauzon, but you also have guys like Rob Font. You have the Devin Powells of the world that are really going to give you different looks. And I think a guy like Devin Powell would be the perfect example, actually, for Chase Hooper. Now, Powell didn't work out all that well in the UFC, owns his own gym in Summerhill, New Hampshire, guy out of Maine. And listen, I mean, I know a lot about Devin Powell because I see him a lot on the regional scene here. I say here, we're from the Maritimes, but in New England, I travel a lot to go cover the fights in New England. But the point being that a guy like that, just recently retired as well, would be perfect to try and emulate a guy like Chase Hooper because he's really long in his striking, he throws a lot of kicks, but he closes distance in a lot of the similar ways that Chase Hooper does. And this is a little bit of a, maybe a bit of a discreditation to a guy like Devin Powell, but Powell, when he was in his 30s, fought a lot like Chase Hooper does early on in his early 20s. The striking, somewhat green, maybe not the best part of their game, but again, you want to see a Devin Powell fight. The fight against Marcus Surin really showed how good his jiu-jitsu could be. But for Chase Hooper trying to round out his game, he went to 50-50 MMA, which is a gym owned by Ryan Hall. Right now there, you have Jordan Rinaldi that was in the UFC, submission specialist, submission artist. You have Ryan Hall again. But another guy that's been there, Corey Sandhagen. So those three guys, you're going to work your jiu-jitsu for sure, but very unorthodox strikers, those three as well.
And I do think that's a good point to bring up when you're talking about a guy who, it's not like Chase Hooper is set in a certain striking system, if you will, and he has to relearn something completely new. It's a very green skill set, and it's very base level, if you will, so it's not like he has to tear down what he already has and then build up something new and add those unorthodox strikes. I do think the fact that he is kind of early on in his MMA career, and really just in his striking career, if you will, I think that's a great benefit for him, because you're going to be able to add some of those techniques onto what... Again, it's not like Chase Hooper's going out there boxing your ears in. Like, he has good hands, he'll throw a little bit of kicks, but he's just so susceptible on the defensive end, and that's really what concerns me more than anything moving forward. Chase Hooper, if you want to fight like Mickey Gall or Damian Maia, go right ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do I'm just going to shoot for takedowns, I'll really implement my ground and pound, my submission game, but again, the striking defense, if a guy like Alex Caceres is able to really tee off on you, it does concern me. Whether or not you beat Peter Barrett, it just does concern me moving forward with his UFC career.
The thing, too, is as far as the striking defense is concerned, even in the fight against Daniel Tamor, he was getting hit, he got rocked, he went back, hit Daniel Tamor with everything that he had, ended up picking the win up by ground and pound. He got on top of him and just started he looked like Alexander Semin playing for the Capitals, just wailing away in his Under Armour compression gear. Now, for Chase Hooper, 7 of his 9 overall wins are by finish. He's got 3 by TKO, 4 of them by submission. If you look at Peter Barrett, again, 9 of his 11 wins are by finish, 7 by knockout, 2 of them by submission. It's tough. I mean, you look at the fight that he had over on Contender Series against Sang Hoon Yu. He got beat in the first round pretty bad, and then he rallied back in the second and third round, so he has that to himself. Again, in the fight against Yusuf Zalal, he was really chasing a lot in that one. This one, kind of a tough one to try and predict, and I don't really love the odds because Chase Hooper opened up a -313. He's now a -406 average on best fight odds. For Peter Barrett, opened up a +246. He's now at a +308. If we have a look at the total Tapology votes, 545 total votes, 82% going Hooper, 67% of voters have him to win by submission. Yikes.
I love how confident everyone else is in Chase Hooper. Again, I'll say it right now. Is Chase Hooper going to win? Probably, because this does feel like one of those matchups where it's, okay, we're going to give this young prospect who we see a future in, a guy who stylistically does match up with himself quite well. But Peter Barrett is one of those sort of upset-minded guys. Here's the problem with Chase Hooper. If the striking is still a really big problem, and if he goes out there striking like he did against Alex Caceres, I don't care who you are, you're probably going to be able to beat him, especially if you're at the UFC level. Because the fact that he was just able to get hit clean so many times going in, his hands dropped as he fatigued too, and that's something you hate to see in MMA fighters, but something you do see. Round 1, their hands are like this. Round 2, they're like this. And by round 3, their hands are just kind of at their waist and they're throwing punches. Something to look out for with Chase Hooper moving forward. I think he'll get the win, but A, those odds are ridiculous. And B, I wish I had as much confidence as the Tapology voters do.
I mean, Matt, this is a really tough one because you got a young guy at 21 years old whose body hasn't fully matured whatsoever, and he hasn't grown into his frame, and that's going to be an issue, especially at 145 pounds. You look at Peter Barrett, he's not 40, but he's a man. He's a man. So you got a young guy taking on a fully developed man. And listen, Chase Hooper's been fighting men so far. He's got 11 pro fights, but Peter Barrett, as salty as his record is and as tricky as his last fight was, he is game and he's going to last. And that's one of those things that I worry about in a fight for Chase Hooper. So he has made those camp changes. He can get the submissions. And ultimately, I will slightly side with Chase Hooper. If I was A, able to not make a pick, I wouldn't on this one. And B, this is as big of a pass as I have on this card. So Matt, we're both going to go with Chase Hooper very reluctantly. I'm looking forward to this fight. It is a weird one. It's on some sites and it's not on some sites too. So it's not on the UFC stats website. It is on the UFC's website. It is on Tapology and it is on Best Fight Odds. So we'll see if the fight actually materializes. Chase Hooper's kind of posted some stuff on Instagram. The fact that he's done some promo for UFC 256. Peter Barrett looks like he's actively training for a fight coming up very shortly on his Instagram. So We'll see if the fight even happens, but I do have to throw that out there as a disclaimer. Again, already tonight, as we speak, as we begin to get ready, Angela Hill's out of her fight with Tecia Torres, so we'll see what happens. But again, both of us going with Chase Hooper. Again, I would not throw this in as a parlay piece. We'll see what happens. It is a great card. Figueiredo taking on Moreno in the main event. So Matt, keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.